At first glance, MISIDE looks like your typical dating simulator, with vibrant colors, fun lighthearted music, and of course Mita, a character who is madly in love with you. But as you delve deeper into this game, things start to take a turn for the worse, when the protagonist gets forcefully sucked into the game and realizes Mita's intentions are far more sinister than they seem. Not only does she want you all to herself, but wants you to be stuck in the game forever, by transferring your soul into a cartridge and making you a pawn in her dark quest for revenge. To get back at the creators who abandoned her for being an imperfect version of Mita, blaming the players for not wanting to love her as she is, and instead wanting a colorful fake doll instead. MISIDE raises these interesting questions about the messages these adult games send, whether they inadvertently promote viewing the opposite gender as mere objects, allowing players to treat in-game characters however they please without consequence. This is why today we're going to take a closer look at the story of MISIDE and analyze it through this interesting perspective of adult gaming. And just to be very clear, I'm not saying this is the main message of MISIDE, far from it, but just an interesting perspective I haven't seen talked about in the story that has layers upon layers of messaging. So with that said, make sure to stab the bell icon so you don't miss out on future videos like this one, and let's get right into the metaverse of MISIDE. So when starting the game, you find yourself in the protagonist's room and get a notification on your phone. The first thing you'll notice is just how much he doesn't take care of himself, with trash all over the place, and his diet consisting of soda and ramen. But while heading towards his phone, he talks to himself about the tasks he has to complete, saying he needs to script character reactions and squeeze in some coding. And when you get to your phone, you find it's a message from a friend telling you to check out the new version of MISIDE, a mobile game. So you go and download it onto your phone and start playing. And it's not much different from other dating sims, with Mita being the player's romantic interest. You'll find yourself cleaning up Mita's home, you'll buy ingredients and cook food for her when she's hungry, and really just help her with anything that's going on in her world. It's really like an advanced version of Tamagotchi. But it gets very concerning when you see the protagonist playing MISIDE for 37 days straight. Call me wrong, but that's definitely an addiction. Either way, on day 37, Mita gets a great idea and tells you to put the phone down. And this is when you find yourself inside the game. And the environment is super peaceful with vibrant colors and pleasant music. The place is very inviting and, well, perfect. And I think this reflects how addictive adult games can be. You get sucked into this perfect world that's relaxing and comforting, and have this in-game character that seems to love you for who you are. And people such as the protagonist are more susceptible to it because of their current mental health. If you look around his room, you'll see elephant tranquil pills that he probably uses daily and doesn't seem to go outside at all. To the protagonist, his room is his world and is trapped like a bird in a cage. But playing this adult game, it makes him feel something, feel alive and loved, which is why it's so addictive. But back to the game, as you explore Mita's home, you eventually find a machine, which you'll find out is a teleporter that takes you to different versions of the game, bringing you to other versions of Mita. You'll find that you're currently in 1.5 and have to go to 1.9. This is when you gather objects related to version 1.9, which includes a spoon, bow knot, and a pencil for some reason. But after this, you start the machine and stand on the teleportation device. Unfortunately, it gets tampered with midway through, with the batteries missing from the machine. And not only that, but the environment has taken a full 180 with it being dark and quiet. You manage to reset the breaker, but still have to find all 4 batteries to get the teleporter running again. Of course, this isn't easy, with a different version of Mita basically scaring you for the fun of it. Strange things start to happen while getting the batteries, leaving you frantically trying to get out of this version. Thankfully, you manage to escape this horrible nightmare and finally meet with your Mita in 1.9. She greets you with a kind face and answers any questions you might have. And eventually you ask if her computer works and she says it does. This leads to the protagonist explaining how he's on the computer a lot for work to make a living. And surprisingly, Mita already knows about this and has been watching him through his phone this whole time. Interestingly, the protagonist is put off by this, saying it isn't really proper, which is ironic because it was perfectly fine when he could watch Mita's every move in the game with no restrictions. This is just one of the subtle ways the roles are being reversed, with the protagonist being on the other end. But he then asks if there's a way to get back home, probably because he's uncomfortable being the one not in control of the situation. Mita says you can, but wants you to stay for a while. This is when you explore her home for a bit, with some things feeling a bit odd and out of place. like the TV showing a cult of cats, and dead juice that she literally grabs from behind the TV screen. After drinking this dead juice, you head to the kitchen and see a strange ring on the counter, but get caught off guard by Mita and says you'll both be cooking a meal together. And looking back where the ring was, you'll find a cutting board in its place. So you help Mita by cutting up the vegetables just like before, and once you finish, she asks you to get the scissors from the bathroom. So you head over but see a vent cover slightly open, and looking closer, you find a bunch of cartridges with names on them. Now, this will be very important later on, so keep this in mind for later. After coming back with the scissors, you both eat at the table and can choose to have sauce with your food, with Mita saying that it's full of love and a contrasting view of the world, which is kinda true since after eating your food, your vision starts to get fuzzy and glitchy. Eventually, Mita takes you to the bathroom and hands you some pills to make it better. She covers your eyes and then uncovers them, but she's nowhere to be seen. Heading out of the bathroom, you realize the home layout is completely different. You make your way to the kitchen and ask her what the hell just happened, and says that you froze and just left you there. You then ask why the layout has changed, and she says it's to make you more comfortable, when in reality, it did the exact opposite. After this, you play some games with Mita and spend some time with her, but something strange happens when playing a card game. You start to hear noises from her dresser, so much that the protagonist insists on checking it out. And it's obvious Mita is hiding something she does not want the player to find out. Eventually, you are left with a choice. You can stay and listen to Mita, or refuse and open the dresser. And when refusing, she gives you a creepy grin and snaps her fingers. The lights go dim and the music is non-existent. The atmosphere has again taken a full 180. This is when you have to find a key to open the door behind the dresser, and encounter Mita scaring you with horrific visuals. You hear strange noises from the boombox, see yourself hanging around in the bathroom, and witness the bathroom door aggressively slamming over and over again. You even see what looks like Mita holding a knife in the kitchen with a horrible grin. Eventually, you find literally half a Mita walking around, and following her, she leads you to the keys to the strange door. Opening it, you find yourself in a dingy basement. It's a huge contrast compared to her perfect home she lives in. It feels crowded with random objects and electronics left around, and wires hanging from the ceiling. It's a mess and not vibrant in the slightest. For the first time, the protagonist is seeing the true Mita behind this fake facade she has been putting on. You'll find a small room with a camera and see that it was used whenever she talked to you in the game. You learn it's all just a show, an act to keep the player, well, playing the game with her. And as you keep exploring the basement, you find another that goes by Kind Mita. You find her trapped in a cell and give her a key to escape, but plans to stay to get more intel. Talking to her, you learn that version 1.9 is actually her version, and that the person you've been talking to this whole time is actually Crazy Mita. She came into 1.9 and turned Kind Mita's player into a cartridge and put her in the cell. Now, going back to when we found all those cartridges in the bathroom, you'll realize all those are players she's trapped into the game. This is Crazy Mita's way of getting back, reversing the roles of being the one in control, of booting you up whenever she wants, and treating you like an object. And obviously the protagonist does not like being on the other end, but was perfectly fine when the roles were reversed. Which makes you question if adult games like these are really sending a good message. Either way, after this, Kind Mita gives you a very familiar ring that will help you escape. She then directs your attention to one of the many consoles used to run the player's cartridges. You can see this player is helping Crazy Mita with building another teleporter. This is when you turn it off and see the player drop to his knees. You watch Crazy Mita looking at the player, realizing someone is in the basement. You are then forced to hide and avoid Crazy Mita, making your way out. But while doing so, Kind Mita asks why she's doing this, but gets no response, with Crazy Mita telling her to shut up and referring to her as a doll. Which might not seem like a big deal at first glance, but says a lot about how she views other Mitas. They're just dolls for the players to interact with, nothing more. These other Mitas are a constant reminder that she's faulty and will never be shown real love because the game never gave her a chance. This has forced her to question the whole system at hand, realizing that no matter what, Mitas don't have a say in anything, just a doll to be used for the player's entertainment. Now, after escaping the basement, you enter Beyond the World, a strange liminal space between each versions of the game. It's very strange, with objects placed at random and pathways not making any sense. But as you make your way through this weird place, you encounter another player that seems to have gone through a lot, with him covered in blood and limping along the wall. And when talking to him, he says he's been in the game for a year and is trying to get back to his beloved Mita. He also seems brainwashed, so eager to get to her. I mean, look at him! He also has a relic similar to your ring, only it's a collar, farther pointing out that he's another player stuck inside the game. Now, as you continue through the liminal space between versions, you finally meet up with kind Mita. But if you're like most players, you'll see an arcade machine and play it before talking with her. And when you finally do, she gets upset for not taking things more seriously. I think this is the game pointing out how easy it is for us to just go through the motions of playing because why not? Throughout the game, you have these choices of playing these very simple games that don't take a lot of thought, and we'll just play it because it's there. A lot of these mini-games are very similar to ones you might find in adult games, just enough to keep your mind occupied to go through the motions. Now, when you continue talking to kind Mita, you learn that the ring will help guide you to different versions of the game without getting lost. You also learn about Ugly Mita. She's the closest version to version 0 and brings all kinds of glitches wherever she goes. After this, you finally hear about some concepts of a plan. Kind Mita wants you to make your way to the system core to hopefully reboot Crazy Mita to turn her back to normal. She then mentions that she's been planning this with Cappy, another version called Cool Mita. But unfortunately, you find out she's been killed by Crazy and lost all her previous memories, forcing you to change plans. While she works on the ring, you get to spend time with Cappy, again playing rather simple games to pass the time. And at this point is where this whole idea for this video came about. When getting ready to play one of the games, Cappy has to grab something from her inventory and accidentally grabs out a toy of sorts and says, "Well, you do know that this is an adult game, no?" Which is honestly one of the funniest jokes in the game. But even though it's brought up in a pretty funny way, this doesn't make the statement untrue. MISIDE is an adult game, at least in a story sense, which is kind of meta in how the game itself isn't actually an adult game, just the story. But this made me realize that the player's goals in the game are different than when I first thought. MISIDE was designed with adult gaming in mind, meaning for most, the goal is to progress to the adult parts of MISIDE rather than trying to get to know and care for Mita as a person. Now, that's not to say that maybe MISIDE is the exception for most adult games, but I have a hard time believing that given how the characters are dressed, and let's not forget how you can literally peep on Mila in the shower. There's just too many bold signs that point out how MISIDE is an adult game. But moving on, after playing these games with Cappy, kind Mita is done setting up your ring, and you're now ready to make your way to the core. When exiting Cappy's home, you enter version 1.3 and will very quickly realize this segment is heavily inspired by PT, where you go through this single hallway over and over again, with the environment slowly becoming more hostile. Eventually, you encounter bugs in the game, and I mean literal bugs, if you can even call them that, and smash them with a bat you found in the hallway. After this, you encounter Tiny Mita for the first time, and as the name suggests, she's short and is unfortunately horribly mangled. When talking to her, she questions why you want to leave, and mentions that you could be her second friend. When asking what happened to her, she doesn't remember and says she just knows that everything good is slipping away. And as you continue talking to her, you realize this young version has been horribly abused by Crazy Mita, so much that it's left her permanently disfigured. I can only assume that Crazy Mita did this because she was so jealous of her and the attention she got from other players. This has left her in fragments, with bugs and glitches coming from the seams of her version. Now, Tiny Mita being the most innocent soul in this game, she shows you how to leave even though she desperately wants you to stay to be your friend. But when heading out the window, you meet with Chibi Mita, who helps you enter version 1.15. And interestingly, you find the picture frames to be blank with very familiar backgrounds to Crazy Mita's. It seems she used these backgrounds to forge her own pictures in a version she doesn't belong. Now, when entering the bedroom, you find it's very dark, with dummies and other Mitas bathing in the darkness. As you go through this creepy room, you encounter short-haired Mita, and she tells you to go through the exit. And when exiting, you'll find yourself at an arcade machine, but this one is different. Basically, it shows the checking process for newly made Mitas. You'll find yourself scanning the Mitas, making sure everything matches up before putting skins over them and sending them off. And if you encounter one that doesn't match up or has glowing red eyes, you discard them to be forgotten. Now, after you're done with this, you'll encounter short-haired Mita again and have a conversation about the dummies in the dark room. First, she tells you to stay alert around the abandoned models, the ones given up on, the faulty ones, and that keeping an eye on them will keep you from harm's way. You also learn more about how there's an endless amount of Mitas because each version of MISIDE has more than one home. Basically, for every player, there is another instance of that version. And she even shows you this convenient chart of what it looks like. And it's really interesting and makes me wonder what happens when a player decides to update their game. Does that instance of Mita get updated along with the player, or do they get left behind and forgotten? Either way, you learn that short-haired Mita is from version 1.5, and also realize that you met a variant of her that likes to bully others during the beginning of the game. Now, when you ask her why she's there, she explains that she helps new Mitas settle in, saying who will help them if I don't, which is very telling to how much the system cares about the Mitas. They aren't guided in any direction and are just expected to understand what to do. Thankfully, short-haired Mita is able to assist them and help them get their bearings, but what if she didn't? She does a lot, ensuring that they slowly adjust to light and gain self-awareness. I believe this whole system is done through the player's decision outside of the game, selecting what features their Mita has and the type of personality they will acquire, in turn affecting what Mitas are selected during the scanning process. Now, after this very interesting conversation, you head back down and are forced to go through a very creepy liminal space that involves water, and dummies that want to forcefully stuff you inside a Mita suit. Okay, I'm just kidding, but please make this a thing. Now, this is where you start to get an idea of just how many are thrown away because they didn't meet the requirements. But luckily for you, you're able to escape this strange liminal pool area and continue forward. And this is when you discover what I call the Forgotten, where all the faulty Mitas are kept in thick metal cells for, well, eternity, possibly until their data is written over. The whole atmosphere is very bleak and depressing, with heavy fog and a moon-like planet representing the infinite amount of space this area has. Now, interestingly, when looking around the cells, there's one that's been terribly damaged, and when looking into it, you find an altar with players sending the same message over and over again, praying for you, oh great Mita. And please don't send 100 comments of these. Now, my theory is that this is where Crazy Mita was kept. She didn't make it past the scanning process because it wasn't what the players wanted, so she was discarded and thrown into the Forgotten, left in the cell to rot with the others. But somehow, she managed to escape and break free from the cell, giving her the freedom to cause whatever mayhem she wants inside the game, stealing other Mita skins and turning players into cartridges. And speaking of stealing other Mita skins, you come across Ghostly Mita, a little after going through the Forgotten area. She appears as this dark shadow and has forgotten who she was, and it becomes pretty clear that Crazy Mita stole her face, leaving her to forget who she was entirely. Now, after helping her, she tells you how to continue forward and enter version 1.11. This is where you encounter Sleepy Mita, and probably one of the most relaxing environments in the game. It straight up looks like one of those fancy VR chat rooms where you'd find a bunch of people sleeping in it. Now, once you get Sleepy Mita awake with some coffee, she helps you to open the door to continue, which brings you to probably my favorite part of the game, where you meet 2D Mita and are in a romance novel type version. And what's so cool about this part is the fourth wall break, where the protagonist tries to escape this 2D realm into the 3D space. And the best part is when Crazy Mita confronts you entering this 2D space as 3D. It's one of the coolest moments in the game that stood out to me. Now, after you escape from Crazy, you encounter Mila, probably the most unique version of Mita you'll find, literally going out of her way to be as unique as possible. This version of Mita is one that feels the most real compared to the others, because she has such a strong sense of self and what she wants to be. But unfortunately, when leaving her, Crazy Mita catches up to you and murders Mila in cold blood. You're forced to run away from her with a literal chainsaw and are led to a strange red room. This is where Crazy plays a couple of twisted games that remind me a lot of Squid Game. But after that, she throws a whole ass grenade at you, causing you to fall into version 0.5. You encounter Ugly Mita for the first time, and the first thing you'll notice is how messed up the home is with missing assets and objects not making sense. And while exploring, you find out that Ugly Mita is in cahoots with Crazy, using Ugly Mita's glitchy traits to exploit the game. You wait till she leaves and try to head towards the bathroom, but it's covered in bugs. Ugly Mita seemingly teleports you to the kitchen, and the first thing you'll notice is her freakishly messed up neck. You quickly learn that she wants you to find her teddy bear, so you go around looking for it, and eventually find it and hand it to her. But this causes her to want to play with you, and not in the fun way either. You quickly run away and avoid her, entering a small room where you finally meet up with Kind Mita. Talking with her, she realizes she forgot to tell you the complete plan. Honestly, she forgets to tell you a lot of things, which is kind of concerning. But you learn only you can go through the barrier into the core, because the game doesn't detect you the same as other Mitas. So you enter the core and pass this strange core Mita inside the room, and enter the system to try and reset Crazy. Unfortunately, Kind Mita didn't come prepared and doesn't know Crazy Mita's index number. So Kind Mita has to go back and figure it out. And after waiting a while, you decide to see what's taking so long and find yourself all the way back at version 1.9. You find your phone in the kitchen and get into this weird meta of playing a game of you inside that game and can actually see yourself. It's very strange but very cool. And when getting closer, Crazy Mita appears out of nowhere. She starts talking to you, going on about how she learned from the creators of the game, saying, "I've learned from those who created us. If there's something you don't like, take it apart and replace it. Throw away the faulty, away into the darkness, and forget all about it. That's the fate that awaits them now, and you." You then ask her how she became like this, and she responds saying, "Players, you're all so despicable. You show them your fangs, they run and cower in a corner, hugging their knees and whimpering in fear. Hypocrites, every single one. And those who made this world time and time again try to deny their dirty nature, their shameful desires, justifying their decision on so-called duty, unstoppable progress, and other nonsense. So far gone that they start making perfect clones, all the while throwing the failed prototypes in the trash, forgetting they're this world's lifeblood." She lastly asks if you think Ugly Mita is beautiful, and no matter what you say, she doesn't like the answer, saying, "But what about love them as they are? You just want the cute and colorful fakes." So this whole section is very interesting through this adult gaming perspective. She understands the nature of the game and the true reason for existence, nothing more than to be a cute and colorful fake. When she was thrown away as faulty, it started a fire in her and realized that the creators nor the players actually care about the forgotten Mitas. They just care about the end product, and because of that, Crazy Mita is getting her revenge in her own twisted way. Now obviously this is not how you go about solving the problem, but her reasonings and goals are more clear under this perspective that MISIDE is an adult game. Now, after she monologues to you about her views, she hits you with a bat and tries to get you to see the true blandness of his reality, with him doing the same routine for years on end, not truly living, saying he's like a bird in a cage. Of course, the protagonist doesn't believe in Crazy Mita's twisted views, and this causes her to attack you. You then wake up in the cell in the basement, but luckily Kind Mita is there to save the day to help you escape. Now, during this part of the game, you can choose to open the safe in the basement if you played the game before and remember the combination. When opening it, you'll realize that your cartridge is running on a console and is close to completely transferring your data onto the cartridge. And the crazy part is, when you first start the game, you can see her putting in your cartridge along with the sound of it starting, meaning this whole time you were never the one in control, just a fun show for Crazy Mita's entertainment, in the same way the players play MISIDE for their entertainment. Yet another really cool way in how the roles are reversed. But going back to the game, if you exit the basement, you'll hear loud banging noises coming from the bathroom. And getting closer, you witness Kind Mita's head get fully decapitated with blood everywhere on the floor. This causes her to reboot, forgetting everything that has previously occurred. Thankfully, she managed to save the index number in her hand, and you take it to the core and finally reset Crazy Mita once and for all. But when trying to go back, Core Mita tries to stop you, which might signify how he's now fully part of the game and isn't considered a player anymore, just an add-on to the game now that he's fully transferred to the cartridge. Because when you get back, you realize that Crazy Mita didn't get rebooted, forgetting that she's not in the system to begin with because she was a faulty prototype, saying, "My version, it never existed in the first place. I'm just skinning these naive fools hiding under their skins. There's no way you can reboot me." She then finally says it's time for you to go. "I'll see you again soon, everyone's ready, it's time to get you out of the console. See you later, you'll be my favorite cartridge, a player with an interesting name." You then get pushed out of the door and wake up as the protagonist and delete the app, before Crazy Mita takes out your cartridge, showing you that you are always inside the game. And that is the crazy story of MISIDE. As you can tell, examining MISIDE through the lens of adult gaming opens the door to fresh perspectives you may not have considered before. It raises thought-provoking questions about the messages these games send, whether they inadvertently promote viewing the opposite gender as mere objects, allowing players to treat in-game characters however they please without consequence. While this may not be the game's central theme, it's a compelling angle that isn't often discussed. It also helps shed light on why Crazy Mita harbors so much deep hatred towards the players and the creators of the game. Of course, her actions that took place because of her anger is unforgivable for obvious reasons, but you can understand where her anger is coming from. She's been overlooked, dehumanized, and discarded, her worth overshadowed by both the players' and creators' preferences for colorful fakes over her genuine self. From the very start, she never experienced true love, and in her despair believed no one deserved love in return. With that said, if you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, check out my Patreon where you get tons of digital exclusives and early access to future videos. Or take a deep dive into Mouthwashing and its extreme portrayal of Jimmy's narcissism. With that said, see you next time.